Okay, Gitvach to all. We're up to Nun Beis Amid Beis. Tonight's sugya is a well-known sugya. It's the sugya of Hezek She'enoi Nicker, a Hezek that's not recognizable. Usually, when someone damages, right, it's recognizable. Someone hits your car, you could see a dent in your car, right? If someone would go ahead and go poof, and your car wouldn't work anymore, and you don't recognize any damage. So l'chora, if the car would work, I guess it is recognizable. It's not a good mashal. But there are cases where the object is basically the same. Predominantly, let's say if you metame something. So you metame truma, you can't eat the truma anymore, but the truma is the same. This is the machlokes where the hezek she'enoi nicker shmei hezek and lo shmei hezek. Would one have to pay for that or not? That's this evening's sugya, very famous sugya in Shas. We're starting on men nun beis on the beis the Mishnah. Hametame, someone who's metama the tyrus of his friend, for example, truma, he's metame truma. V'hamedama, someone who mixes truma and chulin. Now, why is that a loss? Because chulin can be eaten by everybody, but once truma is mixed in, now it's much cheaper. By the law of supply and demand, truma is much cheaper than chulin. So you're causing the person a loss by limiting its consumption by a kayin. We're going to have machlokes in the Gemara what that is. Does it mean mamish being menasech a yayin to avoid the zara, or does it mean mixing yayin nesek with something else? Right? B'shogeg, if you do it b'shogeg, you're potter. B'meisid chayiv, b'shogeg you be potter from paying. B'meisid you be chayiv from paying. So this really is a baba kama sugya, right? It's as we're accustomed to this parak and last parak, that there's a concept of tikkun olam and a concept of digression. So this sugya really is a baba kama dika sugya. The sugya of the zikin damages. Are you chayiv to go ahead and pay? So the question is, what's menasech? Clearly, we know what metame is. Clearly, we know what medama is. What exactly is menasech? We have a machlokes. Itmar menasech. What exactly is menasech? Rav Amar menasech mamish. You went ahead, says Rashi. Shichshech biyadai l'seichai l'shem avodah zara. You took wine, you shook it in your hands, l'shem avodah zara, the kachois avodasan, and that was the way to serve that particular avodah zara. So you make it what we call yayin nesech. Now be aware, we call yayin nesech is stam yainam. Most of the yayin that we call yayin nesech is yayin that's produced by a guy. A guy didn't go ahead and bring it to avodah zara. The guy simply touched it, or a guy made it. So therefore, it's called stam yainam, and they were geyser. But over here, we're saying we're saying this is mamish yayin nesech, and it was used for an avodah zara, and it was used in this manner that we mashachtek. That's Rav. Shmuel Omar Arev. Shmuel says you take yayin nesech, an existing yayin nesech, and you put it in yayin kasha, and yayin nesech, of course, is asa bahana. So for all intents and purposes, you're going ahead and causing the yayin that you threw it into to be totally lost. You're causing the yayin that you threw it into that would be totally lost. So we have two opinions now. Exactly what.
Is there a bit of a right with this? Is there a right thing here, or
is there a what?
A bit of a right?
A roiv? No, you can't be a mavatal. You can't be a mavatal, right? It's a big sugya if it goes in one by a time, drop by drop, it is bittul. But if you put in all at once, then not. There's a, I think it's Daf Hey and the Rashi's there in Daf Daled and Beis or Hey and Beis and Baba Kama. I think again. So the question is, if you view it, Rav is a chiddush because it wasn't learned previously in the Mishnah. It's the way Rav learned that menasech is your asering it in itself. It's not metame and it's not medama. But according to Shmuel, lechora, what's the difference between menasech and medama? I'm going ahead. I'm taking chulin. I'm truma and mixing it with chulin. Over here, I'm taking wine and mixing it with kosher wine, right? So lechora, it's very similar, albeit it's dissimilar in the fact that it's a total loss. No one will be able to use it. By medama, at least the Kohen will be able to eat it. Okay, with that in mind, says the Gemara the following. Man the Ma'arev, Shmuel says you're mixing the yayin nesech with kosher wine. My time alone menasech. Why? In other words, why didn't Shmuel agree with Rav? Amalach menasech kam le b'derabba minei. Okay, guys, we know there's a sugya in Shas called kam le b'derabba minei. When you over two isurim at the same time, and you're chayiv, in this case, you're chayiv misa for being oived avodah zara, you're chayiv a tashlumin for ruining somebody else's wine, we say you get the more severe. You get the more severe. You say Kam le b'derab minei, and since I'm chayiv misa for what? For that, you b'mezid, you wouldn't be chayiv. In other words, our Mishnah said that this case of menasech, if you do it b'mezid, you're chayiv. Over here, if you did it b'mezid, you would not be chayiv because you're dying. When one dies, they don't go ahead and pay. So therefore, Shmuel said Ma'arev disagreed with Rav because menasech you wouldn't be paying it all, and our Mishnah said b'mezid you would pay. So therefore, Shmuel did not agree with Rav. V'idach and Rav, l'chor, it's a very good taina that Shmuel has on Rav. V'idach kid Rabbi Yirmiyah. The Rav Yirmiyah is of the opinion mishas hadba hu dekana. At which time is he chayiv to pay? When he steals it, is when he picks it up. Mischayiv b'nafshay lahabi ad shas nisuch. However, the misa came at the time of nisuch. So he's picking up this wine for the purpose of going ahead and stealing it. At that point in time, he is chayiv to pay money. After that, he goes ahead and is menasech it. So we know in Kam le b'derab minei, the chiyuv has to take place bivas achas at the same time. This chiyuv is not taking place at the same time. This chiyuv is taking place one after the other. Since the chiyuv tashluma takes first, I'm chayiv, I did it b'mezid, and therefore the chiyuv misa only comes later on. So that's the way Rav would learn. So again, three things: hezek shein nika, metame b'dame menasech, menasech machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Rav ma'arev, Shmuel says it's kamle b'derab minei. Rav disagrees. He says it's not kamle because it's a heikatimser of Yirmiyah. Now the question is, what didn't Rav like about Shmuel? Shmuel said a pshat. You took existing ayin nesech and you went ahead and you put it in what? In regular wine and you asked it. So the Gemara wants to know the following. Right, according to Rav, my time why did Rav have to fetch in Rav Yirmiyah? Why didn't Rav agree with Shmuel? Amalach, Ma'arev, Amin Aleph, Hainu Medama. It's the exact same thing as Medama, right? What's Medama? You took Truma, you mixed it with Chulin. Here you're going ahead, you're taking Yayin and mixing it. So it's unnecessary to state it. It's unnecessary. Once you told me already that Medama is what? Is B'shogeg Potter and B'mezid Chayiv, I would know if Menasech is taking existing wine and being Ma'arib together, I would know that as well. V'idach in Shmuel says the following, K'nasahu u'mik'nasa lo yalfinon. As we're going to see in the Sugya, we're going to paskin fellas that Hezek Sheinei Nika is loy shmei Hezek. So really, even if you did it b'mezid, you should be Potter. It's not Nezikin, guys. It's a chiddush. In other words, if I would tell any of you guys, if you cause someone a monetary loss, you'd have to pay. The answer is you in Hezek Sheinei Nika, you would not have to pay. Again, it's a sugya in Baba Kama or the Shema Mazik. Dafka, certain scenarios you pay, you don't pay. Trust me, Bez Hashem, we shall live me well. We'll get to it in the not so distant future. But right now, just accept. It's not so pashit that you go ahead and damage somebody, you pay. There's certain guidelines. Hezek Sheinei Nika, when it's not recognizable, you're not chayiv to pay. So why does our Mishnah say b'shogeg potter b'mezid chayiv? It's als kanas. So mitame kanas, midama is kanas. Now you want to learn menasech and say it's similar to mitama because they're both going ahead and mixing something together. You can't learn one from the other. Why? Because the kanas is limited to the scenario of kanas. So I would limit it to taking Truman, to putting in the Chulin, but I would not know Yayin and Yayin. And Mamela says Shmuel, Menasech, because of the kasha of Kamle the Rad Minei, if you're going to have the Chayim Skila, he avoids that totally, that he doesn't have to come and do a kimt of Rabbi Yirmiyah, where he was kind at one point and then he was Menasech at another point. He says simply it's speaking what, where you mixed it together. It's similar to Medama, it's similar, but you can't learn that one from the other because Knas we don't learn out. That's the Gemara so far. Ulaman the Omer, according to Rav, the Yol of Kanasa Mekanasa, guys, obviously Rav does learn it. Because Rav said Menasech means Menasech Mamish. Because if it was Me'arev, mixing it together, he would know that from Medama. So the question is, so he learns that one from Kanasa and the other, Kol Hani Lamali. So why do I need all of them? Fellas, once you can learn one from the other, tell me one din of hezek shein and nikah. Tell me metama, and I would know everything else. Metama, if you're metama, the chulin of your truma of your friend, you'll be chayiv metama, you'll be chayiv menasech. Why? Once you learn one kanas from the other kanas, and again, your starting point is, guys, it's all potter. Hezek shein and nikah, lo yishmei hezek. So everything's potter. So comes along, you tell me metama, I'll be chayiv, and I learn kanas from kanas. So therefore, every hezek shein and nikah I can learn out from metama. That's the Gemara's kasha. So why tell me the other two cases? It says you got to tell me the other cases. The tana metama. If you just list the first case metama, each truma hava meaning mishum dekam mafsid lo legamri. If it's truma and you metama it, you can't eat it at all. It's gone. A kohen can't eat it. The metama chulin, and let's say you metama chulin, and people who are makbet to treat their chulin like Tyrus HaKodesh, and therefore they can't eat it anymore. Mishum de also lingering tumah l'chulin sheberetz Yisrael. Therefore, in other words, so if you would just tell me what, you would tell me tamei, I wouldn't know anything else. Avol medama emaloi, but medama you could still eat. If I go ahead and I mix truma with chulin, shalom bacon, shalom kagan could still eat it. Shalom kagan could still eat it. So in other words, if you'd say metama, guys, the reason metama is also because you mafsid it legamri. The kohen can't eat it, and if it's chulin, the person who's makbet eat chulin ataris HaKodesh can eat it. So I've destroyed it totally, and therefore the chachamim gave a knas on it. What about where you're not mafsid it legamri? What about where everyone on the screen would have been able to eat it? Now the only one, when you mix the truma in, the only one can eat it is shalom kagan, but at least shalom kagan could eat it. So there I'd say maybe you don't say you won't give a kanas. Kamash malon, medama that you would give a kanas. Kamash malon, you would give a kanas. V'yashmina medama. Let's say you tell me medama, the second case where you're mixing the chulin and the truma. Mishum de shchichi. They're both found. It's common. Avol metama de loy shchichi, right? But metama, which is loy shchichi, emaloi. In other words, medama is not. The reason not shchiach, guys, not issa deraisa. If you're mixing chulin and truma, what issa were you over? You just made it less accessible, right? You just made it less accessible. But again, it's not over any issa. Mashen came to be mitama something, which is asa. Guys, it's asa to make truma tame. It's asa to make truma tame, and therefore it's lo shchiach. In other words, what do you mean one is more shayach than the other? When one is an issa, not an issa deraisa, so it's common because people are not so makbid. Mashen came when the issa is an issa deraisa, people be very, very makbid. So therefore, I would say metama lo shchicha emaloi. Maybe they did make a kanas. V'yashmina metama umedama. Okay, so now we made it srichasa. Why do you have to tell me medama? Why do you have to tell me metama? Now, what about menasech now? V'yashmina metama medama that you made a kanas. Mishum leikim leibe the Rabbi, because no one's dying over there. Avol menasech, again, the guys, remember the kash is only according to Rav. Rav is the one who says you learn kanas from kanas. Because he's the one who learned the case of menasech is we mishachshech, because if it was a case of what? Of mixing in, you know that from medama. So therefore, I would say what? The reason why they made a kanas is because kam leibe the Rabbi. But the other ones, aval menasech to go Rabbi emaloi, I would say by kamle it's not necessary to make a kanas because you're going to be chayiv benafshay, kemash malon kidav yirmiyah, that you're not chayiv benafshay and you make a kanas. Okay, so now we made it srichasa for each one. One because it's not shchiach, one because why it's not nafsa legamri, and the other one because why? Because of kamle. Ula haytana avua the Reb Oven, who had a different pecking order of the three in the Mishnah. B'rishoyna haya oimrim hametama v'hamenasech and chazu loyma af hamedama. So we have the order. We have metama first, midama second, and menasech third. He had the order metama menasech and medama third. Kol hani lamali. Why do you need what? Why do you need all of them? Right. If you know, if menasech yichayev, if they made a kanas, guys, if they made a kanas for first you said metama, then you said menasech, and they made a kanas by menasech where there's a side of misa. Certainly, then what? You didn't have to tell me medama. So it's kash on Rav. Why do you have to say medama? So tzricha. Diashmina metame mishum deloy kim leibe the Rabbi. There's no if you metama, there's no death. Aval Menasech, again, remember the order, guys. Mitame, Minasech, Midama. So now, I would say the reason they gave a kanas by what? By Midama, because there's no Kimle. But by Menasech, there's Kimle, I would say you wouldn't have to throw in a kanas. Just Menasech and not Mitama, you shouldn't come Masalei Lagamre. Aval Mitame, Delay Masalei Lagamre. Even though you can't eat it, you can still burn Truma Tamea, guys. You can still use it as a fuel source. So since you can still use it as a fuel source, Maloi, I'd say they wouldn't throw a knas in it. Therefore, you had to tell me you do. In other words, by Avodah Zarah, the whole thing is gone. And by Chulin, of course, by Truma Chulin, you're causing a tremendous loss because you're limiting it. You can't eat it. You can only use it for fuel. Medame, the hefset nuadhu, because it still can be eaten. Maloi, so tzrichi need all of them. So all intents and purposes, what have we done in the Mishnah? We said Hezek Shein Nika Loishmei Hezek. We said the Chiddush is it's a kanas, and we made it tzrichas of why by each one of them, no matter what the pecking order is, why you needed to say all of them. That's what we're up to in our trek through Shas. Right now, everyone's Motzei Shabbos, everyone's chilled out, everyone's good, and we understand the Gemara so far. Amachizkiya, Divar Torah, Echad Shoygeg, the Echad Mezid, Chayiv. By Metama Menasech, Mina Torah, you be chayiv, because he holds hezek shein nika shmei hezek. He holds hezek shein nika shmei hezek. Whether it's b'shogeg, whether it's guys, is by if you go ahead and injure someone b'shogeg, it says petzach tachas patza, you be chayiv. You know, a person doesn't get off the hook with saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry is nice, but you still got to pay up. Sorry, what do they say? Sorries don't jingle. Right? Sorry, you still got to pay up. So says Chizkiya, if you medame menasech, divat Torah midaraisa, you have to pay up. My timer hezek she'enei nikar, a hezek that's not recognizable, hezek shmei hezek, umatam omer b'shogeg pata. So now it's the chiddush. What's the reason why a shogeg is pata? Kidei sheyodia. Let's guys watch this. You go ahead and you're taking your tefua out of the granary. You're rolling the tefua along, and there's the kayin. The kayin went ahead. He has his truma on the side. There's a sign on it that says truma, and there's no kayin around. You're the last guy. You're the night shift, and you're wheeling out your wheelbarrow, and all of a sudden there's a jolt, and a dead mouse falls out of your wheelbarrow and falls on the kayin's truma. What's the halacha? Finito, right? There's no one there. No one knows anything. Take the thing and pick it up. Leave. I don't want to have to pay. Nothing happened. It's not my fault. But now, if you're told b'shoygeg yipata, you're going to tell the kayin. If I had to pay for my inadvertent damage, then I might not tell the kayin. I might say, leave me alone. I just nicked the car. You don't even see the nick. I didn't do anything. So you keep on rolling along. So therefore, the halacha of shoygeg was to incentivize the person for admitting and telling the kayin. So now he doesn't have to pay, and the kayin won't be eating truma tameya. That's the reason. So again, you're starting at a point of chiyuv. You're chayiv. Because hezek shenik is shmei hezek. However, in order to incentivize the person for admitting that it happened, to ensure the kohen would not go ahead and eat truma tameya, he goes ahead and you say that. Okay, he's going to admit the truth. This is Chizkiya. So hezek shenik is shmei hezek, and matamar b'shoyi pata kadesh yediu yihachi afilu b'meizid nami. So b'meizid also he'll tell the truth. Says, well, I don't think so. Ashla zuki kamachavin. Now he's mechavin, go ahead and damage him. So he wants to damage him. He's going to tell him what he did? Of course not. He wants to mess him up. Okay, that's Chizkiya. Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion Devar Torah echad shoygeg v'echad mezid is pater, and you can figure out why. My time, why you pasik pater? Because hezek sheina nika loishmei hezek. When you damage someone, it's not recognizable. It's not, you're not chayiv at all. So now, what do you have to learn out? So why b'mezid are you chayiv? Like Chizkiya, you had to figure out why b'shogeg you pata. Like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Yochanan, you have to forget the opposite. Why b'mezid am I chayiv? And umat hamamru b'mezid chayiv. You get angry at a guy. Guess what? I can really mess you up really badly. I'll go along, take a sheretz, throw it in, boom. In order to go ahead and make sure that doesn't happen, they said, "Kanas, you can be chayiv." So machlokes guys, Chizkiya and Rabbi Yochanan. Says Chizkiya, hezek sheini nika, shmei hezek. Says Rabbi Yochanan, loy shmei hezek. Good, very good. So now, guys, outside there's a din of pigel. We've seen this before. There's avodas adam. There's the shchita. There's the Kabbalah receiving it in a kli. There's the halacha walking over to the mizbeach, and there's rika, the sprinkling. If the kohen has in mind in one of these things to do it chutz l'makam or chutz l'zman, it's considered pigel. Now the owner of the carbon will have to bring another carbon. This is the classic hezek sheini nika. You're costing the guy money. It's not recognizable the damage that you did. You did damage b'machshava, right? It's not recognizable the damage that you did. Okay, so now hakohanim shepaglu b'migdash, kahanim that are mefagel in the Beis Hamikdash, meizidim chayavim. They do it b'meizid chayiv. V'tani Allah if they tick an oilam. The reason is if they tick an oilam. Mashma fell is what? That midaraisa they will be potter like Rabbi Yochanan because hezek sheini nika lo shmei hezek. If they tick an oilam, they're chayiv. B'yam hezek sheini nika shmei hezek. I shogigin peturin if they tick an oilam mi boile. It should say not the mezidim are chayiv. They should say shogigin are potter. Hachinami kama inachinami mezidim chayavim. Hashogigin peturin if they tick an oilam inachinami. That's where you have it. Hezek sheini nika shmei hezek. Therefore, b'mezid you are chayiv, and b'shogig you should also be chayiv. If they tick an oilam, therefore, if they tick an oilam, you would be potter. If they tick an oilam, they let him off the hook. Okay. Now the halacha is that the paraduma can't be worked at all. The paraduma can't be worked at all, and even when the paraduma has been slaughtered correctly, the ashes burnt, and you took the ashes and mixed it together with the mayim chayim al keli. You mixed it together, and now you have the tzloichis, you have the mechatos that also can't be used. So what happens if a person uses it? It's a hezek sheini nika. You don't recognize the difference in the animal. You don't recognize the difference in the. So therefore, we're going to take that concept and apply it to the machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan and Chizkiya. Masir Rebbe Lazar, ha'osim malacha b'meichatas. Someone does malacha with the ashes of the paraduma when they mix together with the water. Ubeparas chatas, or with the paradum itself. Pater midinei adam b'chay b'dinei shemayim. Be pater midinei adam b'chay b'dinei shemayim. Now it's mashma over here that hezek sheini nika lo shmei hezek, because it was shmei hezek should be chayiv afilu b'dei adam. B'yam hezek sheini nika shmei hezek like Chizkiya b'dinei yaminami l'chayiv. Okay, so the Gemara is nice format. Once you have the machlokes between the two, and now we're challenging. So we're challenging Chizkiya. Why over here? Says the Gemara. Who moisif la? He Rebbe Lazar asked the question. Who mafarik la? And he Rebbe Lazar will answer the question. So I guess we have two venues. We have the paraduma, and we have the mechatas. Now we're going to see this. This is not a sugya of enochinami that hezek sheini nika is shmei hezek. There is a very big petur bidei adam called grama. In the zikin, the damage has to be correct, or something called garmi. Let's stay away from the garmi for a while. If you cause the damage, I'll give you an example. This is classic. If you would tie up a person in the jungle, leave him tied up and leave, and he gets eaten up, you'd be pater. You cause this damage. If a person's in an enclosed cage and you take a snake, poison the venomous snake and throw it in, you'd be pater. If you took the venomous snake and took it and put it on his hands, you'd be chayev. That's direct. One is indirect. When something's indirect, it's pater. The teretz to the Gemara right now is going to be the same teretz. Really, hezek sheini nika is shmei hezek, but the patur here is grama. In other words, it's not a hezek, not because it's hezek sheini nika. It's not a hezek because it's a grama and it's not direct. That's going to be the teretz of the Gemara. Guys, one more time. The Gemara's assumption now is that hezek sheini nika is lo shmei hezek, right? Because again, you would what? Only because you're part of bidei adam. And the Havamina is you did a damage, and therefore you're potter. Why? Because it's not nicker. The territory of is not, that's not the reason you're potter. The reason you're potter is you didn't do a damage. Yeah, guys, the reason you're potter is because you didn't do the damage. You didn't do the damage. Why? Because it's grama. That's the teretz. Says the Gemara. Who ma'isalo u'mfarikla. Para shechnisa l'ravka. You put the para for the purpose of what? Of l'ravka. You put it in the corral. There's nothing wrong with that. And you put it in what? Almanasha tinaik. It's supposed to nurse. There's nothing wrong with putting a para in to nurse. But you also put it in there in your machshava, v'tidaish. When it's going to nurse, when it's walking around, it's also going to thresh. Since that's in your mind, and you didn't do it directly, it's a grama. Memela, that's why you're part of bidei adam. Not because leishmei hezek, because it's not in that damage at all. Mechatas, what's the word? The mechatas, what's the case of mechatas? Sheshokol behen mashkoilis. In other words, I mamish didn't use the water. I used it as a weight. In other words, I put on one side of the scale, I put a piece of meat, and I put this on the other side of the scale. So I didn't use it directly, and therefore it's a grama, and therefore what? It's leishmei hezek. But not because it's not a nezek, not because it's not because it's a hezek sheninika, it's because it's not a nezek. Guys, good. I think it was a good hesper. Right? You say that what? It says that if you would do it, it's kasha. The mechata is not puzzle. It's like kasha. Habegufon. Where is it puzzle? That's if you use it yourself. Habekenegdon. Okay, guys. Oh wow. I don't know where that came from. Guys, over time, again, if I'm still doing it the next year, give a kiddush. We'll have a party. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, let's say the following: you have a cylinder, and there degradations, I guess that's the term, degrees on the cylinder, and you want to figure out how much the meat weighs. So one of the ways they would do it is you could do one of two ways. You had a scale, a Libra scale, or you went ahead, you took the meat and you put the meat into the water, and the amount that it displaced, you'd have an idea. When you go ahead and put the meat in the water itself, that's direct, and therefore you're chayav, therefore you pass the water. Where you use on the side of the scale, it will be potter. That's the Gemara's teretz now. The Gemara begufa b'maisa ka'avid b'hu. The hezek shein nikash shmei hezek b'dini adam nami l'chayav. Oh, 1 second. You're telling me the whole ketub is grama. Now you're telling me that what? That when you use it begufon, right? You're telling me that, right? You should be chayav bidei adam. In other words, you shouldn't get off the hook. In other words, we said we said you're part of bidei adam. Why are you part of bidei adam? This is not grama. This is direct nezik. And remember my hezbah. My hezbah was that the Torah is grama. Once you use it directly, it's not grama anymore. It may be hezek shein and nikah, but it's not grama anymore. So you should be chayav even bidei adam. So what's the answer? You didn't use it. You didn't put it directly. If you didn't use it, if it's not direct, then why you part of bidei adam chayav shmayim like kasha? Okay. Now, what's hesech hadas? Hesech hadas is where you're supposed to have in mind the whole time that this is mechatos, that this is a paraduma. You should never lose it. Your mind should not drift off. Where the brisa that said it's kasha is where you didn't drift off. So I used it on a scale. It's groma ba'alma, so I'm not chai b'nizik. And I always had in mind that this is mechatos. The other one, in the same case, I'm using it on the scale, but I thought of it as a weight. In other words, I didn't think of it as mechatos. I said, 1 second, it weighs a pound, it weighs a kilo, whatever it is. And since I lost sight of the fact that it's chatas, therefore it's a grama, and therefore I'm part of bidei adam, chayav bidei shemayim. So where would be kasher? Again, what's the kasha? Kasha is one says part of bidei adam, chayav bidei shemayim, then it says kasha completely. How do you reconcile the two? The one that says kasha completely is it's speaking the same mitzias, the same case. Not where you put directly in. If you put it directly in, that is not grama, and therefore, since hezek shnei nika shmei hezek, I be chayav. It's not speaking where you put it directly in. It's speaking where you used it on the scale. However, there's a difference how I viewed it. If I viewed it as mechatos and I never lost sight of that, then it's kosher. If, however, I lost sight of it, then it's puzzle. I'll swat. I'll put the other nishamayim because it's grama. Because I thought of it as a weight, and I didn't think of it as mechatas. So far, Kiskia has held serve in the machlokes between Kiskia and Rabbi Yochanan, whether hezek sheininika shmei hezek or lo shmei hezek. We've been challenging Kiskia, and he's held serve on every challenge we've gone ahead and placed against him. Masira Papa. Gozel matbeya, you steal a coin, the nifsel. And now the coin becomes, you were in Israel in the 60s, you stole a liter, whatever it was, what was it called? You know what I'm talking about?
A lira.
A lira, yeah, right, a lira. You stole the lira, you wake up in the morning and it's this shkalim. The lira is worth nothing. You still have the same coin you stole. So you stole the lira, and now it's puzzle. It doesn't exist anymore. Truma, you went ahead and you stole truma, binit mas, and it became tamei. Chametz, you stole chametz, v'avalava pesach, and pesach passed by. So these are all guys, hezek, shein, and nika. You don't recognize the hezek. Aymalai, you can say to the person you stole from, as long as you're going to return the same thing you stole, the same truma, the same coin, the same chametz, you can say hari shachol lefanecha. You're going to say what? Here it's in front of you. V'i amin, if you have the opinion that hezek shein and nika, shmei hezek, that hezek shein and nika is shmei hezek, hi gazlanhu, right? This person, when he picked it up, guys, remember, he picked it up and stolen. The chiyuv of mammon, as soon as, in other words, that created the chiyuv of heshem esagzela shegazal. So he's going to have to go ahead and mamish pay him back. Again, if I go ahead and take something, it's a my rishus at that point in time, meaning it's mine. That's the act of hezek. So good, there's no change in the object itself, but everyone would admit that as soon as I stole it, the chiyuv of mammon is right then and there. So how could you say harishal chalafanecha? It must be that hezek shein and nika is lo shmei hezek, right? So tiyufta, it's an upshlag on. Let's say machlokes between Kiskia and Rabbi Yochanan, whether hezek shein and nika shmei hezek or not, is a machlokes tanoim. Hametama v'amedama v'manasech echet shoygeg v'echad mezid chayiv div Reb Meir. Apparently, Reb Meir agrees with Kiskia that hezek shein and nika is what is shmei hezek. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shoygeg potter v'mezid chayiv. If you do it b'shoygeg you potter mezid chayiv. Our Mishnah, my lav v'hakamifli the masava. Reb Meir is of the opinion hezek shein and nika shmei hezek. Therefore, I'm chayiv for both, whether it's shoygeg or mezid. Umasav and Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion lo shmei hezek. It's not a hezek. So therefore, what? I'm put and shoygeg I'm chayiv because of kanas. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, no. The kuliyalma hezek shein and nika lo shmei hezek. Everyone holds lo shmei hezek, even Reb Meir. So guys, if Reb Meir holds lo shmei hezek, why are you chayiv? V'hacha b'kansei shoygeg atamezid kamiflagi. Here we're going to be kanas shoygeg atamezid. The masavar kansu shoygeg atamezid. Reb Meir is of the opinion that just like mezid, hezek shein and nika, guys, hezek shein and nika lo shmei hezek. Really, you should be potter completely. The mezid we give a kanas. Do we go ahead and extend that kanas to shoygeg or not? Says Reb Meir, you do. Umasava, Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion lo kansu shoygeg atamezid. The mezid they gave a kanas, but shoygeg not. So in other words, you're not locked into saying Rabbi Yochanan is arguing with Reb Meir. Rabbi Yochanan can come out of field of Reb Meir. Reb Meir could agree with the shittas of Rabbi Yochanan that hezek shein and nika lo shmei hezek, and really I'm potter completely. So why are you chayiv b'mezid? Because of kanas, and not only am I chayiv b'mezid kanas, I'll extend that to shoygeg. Rabbi Yehuda is obviously hezek shein and nika lo shmei hezek on potter completely, and then I went and I canceled. Where did I cancel? I only canceled mezid. I did not cancel shoygeg. For the Rami the Reb Meir ad Reb Meir, Rami the Reb Yehuda ad Reb Yehuda. So now we have a problem based upon this. The Reb Meir says a kanas and a kanas we put together, and Rabbi Yehuda says no, only one. In other words, only mezid, not shoygeg. The Tanya, hamivashel b'Shabbos. You cook on Shabbos. You over nissa deraisa. Can you use it or not, guys? You cook on Shabbos. You over nissa deraisa. Can you use it or not? Very famous memra. B'shoigeg. If you do it b'shoigeg, yoichal. The person who did it can eat on Shabbos. B'mezid, lo yoichal. B'mezid he can't. Div Reb Meir. Now, guys, right now we have a steer in Reb Meir. What did Reb Meir say? We're kansa shoigeg atamezid. Over here, we're not canceling shoigeg atamezid. We're saying b'mezid you can't eat, but b'shoigeg you could eat. There's your steer right there. In other words, the Bryce is going to continue, but for pedagogical purposes, the way to go ahead and understand it is right now you have your stira. Reb Meir said by b'metame midame menasech, guys, both shoigeg and mezid are chayev. Over here by Shabbos, he's saying only mezid is chayev, and we don't cancel shoigeg to mezid. There's your stira in Reb Meir. Now, what did Rabbi Yehuda say by metame midame menasech? Only mezid and not shogeg. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shoigel yochal when lemoitze Shabbos. Oh, moitze Shabbos. The mezid loyochel olamis. There's your stira in Rabbi what? In Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says we're not going to let you eat it on Shabbos. You're going to have to wait till moitze Shabbos. After you waited the shear the shear of Kadesh Yasu, the amount of time it would take to cook it, right? But Shabbos you won't be able to eat it. Why? Because we can't say shoigeg to mezid. So before we continue the brisa, let's get the stira down. Guys, look at me. Mitame b'nami menasech Reb Meir, both chayiv shoigeg and mezid. Shabbos only mezid, not shoigeg. Rabbi Yehuda mitame b'nami menasech only mezid, not shogeg. Shabbos both. You have a stira in Reb Meir and a stira in Rabbi Yehuda. Continues the brisa. Rabbi Yochanan has sam l'omer b'shogeg yochel mitzvah Shabbos la'cherim. You'll never be able to eat it, only to serve it to others. V'loy loy b'mezid lo yochel lamis. No one can eat it. Loy loy v'loy la'cherim. Kasha the Reb Meir, as we pointed out. Kasha the Rabbi Yehuda, as we pointed out. Okay, the Reb Meir like kasha. He konis. When did they give a kanas? That's b'drabanan. Now, where's the? That's right. B'daraisa like konis. So what? Hashtus, guys, mitame and medama, mitame and medama. Where's the issa? You l'chayra mitame menasech. It's not an issa deraisa. It says I don't know why mitame is not, but mitame is l'chayra is not an issa. Why is mitame not an issa deraisa? Because Loishmei has it. I'm sorry. Because Loishmei has it, guys. We're going to Shita. Since Loishmei has it, guys. Since Loishmei has it, there's no what? There's no chiyuv, correct? So why you chayev kanas? So where did the kanas? Where they kansa by rabbinical stuff? In other words, the Rav Chachamim wanted to be so makbid. So the makbid according to Reb Meir, shoigeg atumezid. Mashenkin b'daraisa, which has its own chumra built in. That's the raisa. It was unnecessary. So by metame or medama, which are the rabbanon, because hezek shein nikol loishmei hezek, right? There, Reb Meir says it's necessary to cancel shoigeg, so they're both asa. It came by bishul b'Shabbos, which is nissa deraisa. Nope, I don't need to cancel shoigeg at the mezid because the person is not going to come to do it in the first place. Fred Gemara side point. Well, menasech deraisa who the kokonis that menasech is what is a Issa de Araisa. Why they assume it's going to Shitas Rav? I guess Menasech is Issa de Araisa, who the Kokonis says the Gemara, Mishum Chumid Avaydis Kachavim Konislay. Mishum the Chumid Avaydis Zara, we gave a Knas, even though it's the Araisa. In other words, and not, I guess the Chumid Avaydis Zara, it wouldn't keep you away from it to know it's Avaydis Zara. They had a type of Avaydis Zara, so the fact that it's Mezid, to Shaget Mezid, would not be a fact to keep you away. Now, we had a steer in Reb Yehuda, guys. What was the steer in Reb Yehuda? Reb Yehuda said by B'tamei B'nai Nasech only that he doesn't cancel Shoigeg to Mezid, but by Shabbos he does. Because Motzei Shabbos, he had to wait Kadesh Yasu, but you couldn't eat it during on Shabbos itself. Reb Yehuda like Kasha, he like Konis B'derabanan, B'deraisa Konis. He has the opposite svara. Where it's the Chumer Deraisa, then you mark. Where it's the Rabbanan, rabbinical in nature. Therefore, the only issue you can come is the Rabbanan. We're not going to cancel Shoigeg to Mezid. Where it's the Raisa to go ahead and prevent you from this is the Raisa, we'll go ahead and go and be kansa shoigeg to mezid. Okay. V'menasech the Raisa v'loy konis Menasek is the Raisa, and he didn't make it. I said, mamish opposite svaras. Because of Avodah Zarah, it's so severe, people stay away from it, so it's not necessary to go ahead and cancel. Okay, so let's go over. We have a stira in Gemara. We wanted to suggest, guys, that the machloikis between Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan is the machloikis Tanoim between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir said by Metamim and Menasech you're both chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda said only by Mezid and not by Shaygei. Rabbi Meir holding Hesek Sheni Shmei Hesek, and Rabbi Yehuda saying Lo Shmei Hesek. And the Gemara is answering no. Everyone holds Lo Shmei Hesek. Everyone holds that. So what's the shaila? Why therefore if it's Lo Shmei Hesek, why am I chayiv by Shaygei? And the answer is like Rabbi Meir, you can't show you got to Mezid. We ask a steer in that from Hilchas Shabbos where Rabbi Meir is does not the kind of show you got to Mezid by Bishul. Only you could eat it by Shaygei. The Meir says by Mitzvah Daraisa, it's unnecessary to go ahead and give a kanas. Mashen came as this is the Rabbanon. It's less nature. It's necessary to buttress it by going in and making kanas, and therefore Matami Menasek. And Matami Menasek that Daraisa Chomer Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Yehuda goes the opposite way. Rabbi Yehuda said by Matami Menasek we don't give a kanas show you got to Mezid. Hezek Sheni Lo Shmei Hezek. So why by Shabbos does he say they're both asa? If you cook it on Shabbos, you can't eat it on Shabbos at all, even b'shaygeg. He says why? Because it's deraisa. Since it's deraisa, we won't makbid. I metamik menasek's deraisa is not necessarily because of the Chumrah Avodah Zarah. People will stay away from it, and we answered up the stira in Reb Yehuda and Reb Meir. Okay, now for Rami the Reb Meir, we're going to continue by asking a stira on Reb Meir b'deraisa again. B'deraisa by the case of what of Shabbos, Reb Meir was mekel that b'shoigig if you cook you could eat it. The Tanya Hanoitei b'Shabbos, someone who plants on Shabbos b'shoigig yakayim. If he does it b'shoigig, he doesn't have to uproot it. B'mezid yaker. If he does it b'mezid, he has to uproot it. Ub'shvius, and if he plants in the Shemitah year, bein b'shoigig, whether he did it b'shoigig, bein b'mezid, whether he did it b'mezid, yaker, he has to uproot it. Reb Meir. These are the words of Reb Meir. What's your stira? It's an Issa Deraisa to plant in the Shemitah year. You said by Reb Meir by Shabbos by Issa Deraisa, you're not geyser shoygeg. Here you see you are shoygeg. You'd have to uproot it. Hashan stira in Reb Meir by Issa Deraisa. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'shvius b'shoygeg yikayim b'mezid yaker. Right? U'b'Shabbos bein b'shoygeg bein b'mezid yaker. And b'Shabbos, he says the opposite. He says the opposite. And obviously, we'll have a question on Rabbi Yehuda as well. According to your reasoning, forget about the stira in Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir. Minei ubei you have a stira. Michti, choder raisa, voder raisa. Shabbos is the raisa, and Shvius is the raisa. Ma'ishna Shabbos that you let it stay if you do it b'shaygeg, and let Rabbi Yehuda Shemitah let it stay b'shaygeg. Well, Ma'ishna Shvius, and what's the difference? So, in other words, we're asking a question with a question. You're asking a stira in Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Yehuda asking on Rabbi Meir, really, Rashi brings you clear the question of Rabbi Yehuda also. But in the end, we're going to have a teretz of both. So forget asking on them. Why don't you ask on within the Gufer itself? Shabbos is the Raisa, Shemitah is the Raisa. Like Rabbi Meir, Shabbos you keep it, Shemitah you don't keep it, right? And like Rabbi Yehuda, Shabbos you don't keep it, Shemitah you do keep it. So what's the difference between the two? What's the difference between the two? So Rabbi Meir, Mifnei ma ani yomer b'Shabbos b'shogeg yikayim b'mezid yaker. Ubishvius is Rabbi Meir. Ubishvius maybe showing maybe Mezid Yaga. She is throwing mine in the Shvius. They count back to Shvius. Guys, watch. We know there's a halacha of Orla that the first 3 years of a fruit-bearing tree's life, you can't go ahead and use it. It's asa b'hana. In the 4th year, it has a din of neter avoy, which is like Ma'aser Sheni. You have to bring the produce up to Yerushalayim and eat it there. So let's start. If you plant in the Shemitah year, guys, you're planting in the Shemitah year. Start counting. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now you say, 3 years. 1 second. Where's the 3? When did I plant it? 1 second. The first year was a Shemitah year. And people might come to go ahead, and think you're permitted to plant in Shemitah. Thus, it'd have to go ahead and uproot it. We never want to count back to the Shemitah year. But by Shabbos, there is no counting. So it won't come to any Isser. Explains to Rabbi Meir. The reason why you have to be oikerit by Shemitah, despite the fact it's the Raisa and not by Shabbos, because Shemitah you may come to a takala, you may come to in the future a stumble, you may come to count back to the Shemitah year when it was planted and mistakenly think it's permitted to go ahead and plant during Shemitah. But by Shabbos, you don't have to worry about it. Therefore, b'shogeg, leave it in the ground and we won't cancel you. That's Amid Aleph. Ve'ein minor l'Shabbosais. But you don't count l'Shabbosais, and therefore you can keep it in the ground. Davar acher, a second reason. The Gemara always asks, Davar acher, what do you need a second reason for? Nechshdu Yisrael al hashviyis, le'nechshdu al Shabbosais. People were chayish that people will be over on Shemitah, therefore we have to go ahead and be oikerit b'shoigeg. By Shemitah, by Shabbos, it's a deraisa. No, everyone knows one of the obvious malachas is soireya, and you can't plant, and therefore I'm not worried. So in other words, there must have been a problem with the first pshat that we didn't like it, that we had to come on to the second pshat. Okay, so what was the first pshat? That we count to what? We count back to Shemitah. We don't come back to Shabbos. And if there's a question on that, the bottom line is by Shemitah, people will be choshit to plant in the Shemitah year. Therefore, we'll go ahead to make it very powerful. We'll tell them, b'shoge, you got to uproot it. By Kate Shabbos, everyone knows it's asa. You won't do it. Right? The Gemara kasha, like my davar acher. What was the kasha on your teretz about counting back that you didn't like? That you came onto this new teretz of what? Of choshit on Shemitah. Okay, fellas. In order for something to be considered planted, it takes 30 days. So if you plant something 30 days before the Shemitah year, you're good. But if it's not, then you're not good. Then you're not good. What happens if you're counting 30 days and the day you planted was Shabbos? So it comes out there's a hechatimsa where you make count back and use Shabbos to count to ascertain whether it was considered planted before Shemitah or after Shemitah. So in other words, so there is a hechatimsa, there's a possibility of counting towards Shabbos. Therefore, if that's the case, then what's the difference between Shabbos and Shemitah? So that's the answer. People are choshen on Shemitah and they're not choshen on Shabbos. My davar acher hochi kama. V'chi tema Shabbos nami zimnin the mikli yoim lamed Shabbos. Then it'll come out the 30th day will be Shabbos that it took root before the Shemitah year. The nata hayuma. If you would plant that day, who the solkale shasa, the year will be considered gone, and it's considered the first year of the Arla. But if you didn't plant that day, then the year didn't count. So you may count back to Shabbos, and that's Echetimsa. Tashma, therefore, davar acher, you need a different reason. That nechshlu Yisrael al shviyas, nechshlu al shavasais. Okay, it says let's finish up. So now you had a steer in Reb Meir. You also have a steer in Reb Yehuda. What's the difference between Shemitah and Shabbos? By Shemitah, he said you could be oika, by Shabbos not. Reb Yehuda like kasha. Ba'asir Reb Yehuda chamir l'shviyas. In the place of Rabbi Yehuda, Shvius was very chomer. Since it's very chomer, it was unnecessary. You could go ahead and take it out because people are not choshed on it. So therefore, B'shagi, you could take it out. Where do you see that they were so choshed of Rabbi Yehuda this year? The Hudamle l'chavre, a person said to his friend, Dayoro bar dayirasa. He wasn't a very nice fellow. He called him a ger, the son of a gearis. Gave him a shtach. The guy reported to him, I don't eat perish fairs like you. So the Gemara is showing that in that place, they were very makbid on Shemitah in place of Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore you could be oikerit because you're not worried that the people be chayish in Shemitah. Thank you for listening. B'ez Hashem, tomorrow morning.